Good evening. My name's Roz McLean, and I'm going to talk to you about strategic philanthropy and city building for the next generation. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how my perspective is informed. And what it boils down to is that I've been very lucky. Lucky to live in Canada, lucky to grow up in Toronto, to have studied financial economics, and I've been lucky to have worked in asset management for the past 3.5 years. When I was young, my dad worked for the City of Toronto in the Office of Economic Development and Culture. On the weekends, he would often take my sister and me to remote neighborhoods for breakfast. And I've always described our trips this way, but in hindsight, many of these breakfast trips were to areas like Leslieville, Regent Park, and Rexdale, so they're not really as remote as I thought they were when I was 12. But after breakfast, my dad would take us for walks around the neighborhood. He would tell us about what the neighborhood used to be like, what it was like now, and the direction it might be moving toward. This instilled in me a perspective not to see neighborhoods for what they are today, but for what they could be and in the context of what they were. He taught me to see potential in the world around me. So for the past 7.5 years, the focus of my academic and professional life has been the study of finance and investment management, both at Western and at Burgundy, where I work now. My focus in this field comes from a fascination with how well-run businesses are able to compound the value of the limited resources available to them. At Burgundy, we conduct rigorous research on individual companies, and we look for companies that are run by capable, honest management that have the potential to grow the value of our investment over the long term. Fundamentally, finance and investment is the study of how the decisions we make today affect the world around us tomorrow. We use capital markets as a tool to facilitate this decision-making process, a tool that motivates and rewards the practice of thoughtful and disciplined research. So what does all this have to do with strategic philanthropy? Well, to put it simply, there is no capital market mechanism to facilitate investment in not-for-profit opportunities. In fact, when it comes to charitable giving, there's very little infrastructure in place at all to help investors decide which organizations would use their money most effectively and efficiently. As a result, capital allocation in the not-for-profit sector can be indiscriminate and potential can be left unrealized. Of course, the careful evaluation of philanthropic opportunities is available to individuals or organizations who have the scale to conduct this kind of rigorous research. But until now, this only made sense if you ran a foundation that was millions of dollars in size. So when you look at smaller pools of capital that's earmarked for charitable giving, many average donors, and especially younger donors, don't have a meaningful understanding of the expected social impact of their contribution. Their contributions are generous, but they're not strategic. And I think the next generation of givers actually wants to give in a more strategic way, but simply doesn't have the tools to do so. And this is a shame because in aggregate, if these pools of capital were focused thoughtfully, they'd have the potential to magnify the impact of some really high-quality community building organizations. So what's stopping the next generation of donors from giving in a more strategic way? Well, frankly, capital allocation is complicated. What does it mean to be strategic about giving? How do we know if our dollars are achieving all they can, or if we're earning a satisfactory social return on our investment? How do we know if we're making the right decisions? Well, we're not going to be able to distill social impact down to the precision of finite figures in the same way that we can measure the performance of financial investments. Measuring social impact is incredibly complex. Many not-for-profits' goals are long-term, far-reaching, and multidimensional. How do you measure the social impact of something as nuanced as self-confidence? How do you measure belonging or leadership skills? And yet, these social attributes are essential elements of building a great city and of our democracy. So while we can't measure performance with exact numbers, with rigorous research, we can identify higher and lower impact organizations, and we can strategically allocate funding to high social impact projects. We can put money behind ideas and people that are vital to our neighborhoods and vital to the issues we care about. Through research, we can activate potential. So I guess that was a long way of saying that this is why I've gotten involved with the Toronto Foundation. This year, the Toronto Foundation has established a project called Vision 2020 to inspire and facilitate strategic charitable decision-making for the next generation. The concept is simple. A next-generation philanthropist, such as myself, sets up a mini foundation with $10,000. Individually, this pool of capital is relatively small, but the Toronto Foundation is enrolling a cohort of 50 of these next-gen philanthropists. So in aggregate, the block is significant. With the research and expertise of the Toronto Foundation to support them, these 50 next-gen philanthropists learn about issues facing Toronto and about not-for-profit solutions that could be funded in order to address them. Then, the group decides together which high-impact ideas and people to put their energy and their money behind. After 3 years of learning together, these next-gen mini-foundations break away from each other to stand on their own, and each funder has their own foundation for life. This leaves 50 new foundations with training in philanthropic research, evaluation, and strategy. 50 new foundations that connect philanthropy to community needs and opportunities. Vision 2020 provides the structure, the tools, and the research for young people with smaller foundations to give as thoughtfully as those with much larger amounts of capital. It allows them to focus on building a better city and not just giving to charity when solicited. The Toronto Foundation's approach facilitates a process that puts energy and funding behind high-impact organizations. This process funds organizations that are run by capable, honest management who are able to compound the value of the limited resources available to them and magnify the impact of charitable funding over time. So why is this important? Because our city actually needs smart philanthropy and next-gen engagement in order to excel. If you look around Toronto, many organizations in arts, culture, health, and education exist because of the deep generosity of Toronto's great civic philanthropists. In fact, we wouldn't be here in Koerner Hall, we wouldn't be in this room, and we wouldn't be at a Walrus talk if it weren't for their commitment to building a better city. And some of them are here today, so to them, thank you. Thank you for building this city. Looking to the next generation, we have a responsibility to exert ourselves to give in the same measure that we've received. To achieve this, it's up to us to do our research, to allocate our philanthropic dollars strategically in order to build a more resilient city where we can all live up to our full potential. Thank you.